welcome, Nick. Pleasure to have you here. I'll just give you some introduction to the audience about you. So Nick is a business agility coach dedicated to helping organizations and teams focus on outcomes via a principle-based approach when adopting new ways of working. He's passionate about data and telemetry generated by teams and using this for a data-driven approach when it comes to coaching at all levels of the organization. Currently, he works at Nationwide as a ways of working enablement specialist, where he supports teams and leaders. I will post in your Twitter handle, LinkedIn link into the chat so that people can get in contact with you. And yeah, welcome to have you here. Clap my hands and let's get it started.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Mattis. I will quickly share my screen. There we go, desktop 2. And share. Can people see the slides? Thumbs up. Yes. Okay, cool. We're good to get started then. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to my session today. Today's session is going to be all around the importance of being blocked. So when we work with teams and work gets blocked, how we may be missing out on some key information there, not just at team level, but at kind of team of teams, portfolio, value stream, organization level. Within this session, we'll touch on kind of some basic concepts around blocked work, but I'll show you practical things that we use with our teams, and also show you a bit of kind of where we're getting it wrong as well, just so it's not kind of we're absolutely perfect. We're definitely not. We're still learning. And yeah, so kind of my role, ways of working enablement specialist. So most organizations might call that an agile coach. We focus more on helping different parts of the organization apply new ways of working, where it's going to add value, where it's going to be helpful for their context. For myself as a practitioner, I've always been interested around data and telemetry and the stories you can tell with that and the insights it may give you that may not immediately be apparent just in regular conversations. When it comes to my inspirations, there's many. One of them is a guy called Sean Carter. You might know him by his stage name of Jay-Z. He once said this in one of his tracks of men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So I've kind of always been a numbers person when it comes to new ways of working, seeing the impact I'm having in different parts of the organization I'm working in, and using that to inform the path we're going on, finding out if the experiments we run work or not, that type of thing. But we're talking about block work today. And, you know, for me, this is a common occurrence we hear, right? We go to maybe a stand-up or, you know, a daily huddle, whatever you want to call it. And you'll hear someone say, I think I'm blocked, or I might be blocked. And for me, currently, there's a real gap in understanding around what is stopping teams from delivering. So specifically, why are they getting stuck? When are they getting stuck? If someone gets blocked, we lose track, really, of when that actually occurs. And we're not clear on why. We think it might be because of this, but we're not sure. We maybe forget about it, come back to it. We realize that wasn't the reason. But we also have teams that when we work with them, they don't realize that they actually can block other teams as well. And it's also frustrating to know that people don't really speak up when they are blocked. So we'll hope to kind of cover some of those themes in the session today. Good thing for me to start with is, what do we mean by blocked? Because I think there's differing explanations, definitions out there. So it's good to baseline around what I think a good definition of blocked is. And really, we need to think of being blocked as being unable to start or finish something that we want or need to do. So it's not just being unable to finish something that's in progress, which I think is how a lot of teams will think of stuff that is blocked. But also if we have, let's say, the highest priority item on our backlog and we can't start it because we're blocked by another team, then we're blocked in that instance as well. So it's not just a case of stuff that's in progress. It can also be stuff that we want to start. So a good baseline definition of me is, being blocked is being unable to start or finish something we want or need to do. And when it comes to being blocked, blockers manifest themselves pretty much at any time. And in most cases, pretty much everything will get blocked at some point. I never really buy into the notion that teams don't get blocked. Teams always get blocked. It's just the definitions and the reasons why differ. Some of the reasons you can get blocked are things like technical environment issues. So things that are maybe within your own team's control. So let's say maybe our test environment is down and we can't validate a piece of work to find out if it's done or if we can progress it forward, maybe to the next stage in our workflow. Or we can have internal dependencies within our organization. So we could have a new feature that's dealing with a higher data classification and we need security approval. Or maybe we're blocked because we're waiting to hear back from legal, because we're capturing customer data and we need to update our terms and conditions. Or it could be maybe our internal platform's down and we need to wait on our central platform team to get back to us. These are all ways you can have internal dependencies, internal blockers. You can also have external ones, right? So third parties, you may have found a bug if you're working with some vendor tooling, and that may be limiting your ability to finish things. Or it could be you're working with a third party, you need them to test something to validate if it works. And guess what? It's not the highest priority in their backlog. So again, you're blocked in that instance, you can't progress it forward. It may be delayed feedback. So we built a new feature and we're waiting on feedback from our business stakeholders or our product manager, and we can't progress it forward till we get that feedback till we know if that's the right thing or not. So again, we're waiting on feedback, we can't progress it forward, we're blocked. Or we're wanting to start a new feature and we have some clarification needed. Maybe we're using a data source and we're not sure what tables and what columns to use. So we need the business input to help us. So again, we're blocked in that instance. And then the final one, just hidden complexity. So things are just more complex than we thought. So when we pulled this into our backlog, maybe when we started work on this, we thought we understood it, but actually it's a lot more complicated than that. And therefore, it's just more complex than we thought, and we're not quite sure how to progress it. So again, we're blocked in that instance. So these are just common examples in the ways that work can get blocked. So it's really important that we have this thing, what I would call a definition of blocked. Most teams that I encounter, they don't have a consensus on what block means or how to handle work when it's blocked or unblocked. And quite often people will think of themselves as blocked. So I'm blocked from testing as development is not complete. And we've also been conditioned that, if you get blocked, pick up something else, keep busy, keep active, get stuff done. These are all kind of bad ideas. If you're thinking of being blocked from an individual perspective, you're losing out on opportunities to improve, to iterate, to refine your way of working and ways to get better. So just like teams define ready, define done, we need to invest time in defining what block means for our team and the context that they're in. So you see in this image, for example, we've got, our threshold of ready. We know what ready means. We've got our line where we know what done means. But then we've got these kind of, these piranhas and sharks that are in our waters that are blockers. And they might be coming, but we're not quite sure what we're going to do. We'll figure it out when we get there. Teams need to have a bit more clarity around, when we're defining blocked, what does that mean? So I quite like using Comic Agile a lot. I'm sure some people here will have read it, and there's a lot of rounds on LinkedIn and Twitter and such forth. This is a common thing that I see. So, budding Scrum Masters or delivery managers or Agile coaches, they're working with a team and they're spotting, all our work keeps getting blocked when we're in development. So we care about flow. So we need to do something about that. We need to solve this problem. We need to make that visible. And what they do is they solve the problem through transparency. And what they do is they add a column to the Kanban board called blocked. And therefore, all the block work is now transparent. So using a blocked comment is quite a common practice I see, but it makes it very difficult to see where blockers actually occur. And for me, a Kanban board really should model your process. It should model your way of working. And having a blocked column, it almost alludes that we're planning to be blocked, which I think is a really strange way to approach kind of the flow of work. To be planning to be blocked seems quite bizarre to me. So really kind of what we want to focus on is good practice. So keep items where they are and add clear identifiers as to the items that are blocked. So in the Team Charlie Kanban board here, you can see we've got the blockers identified, but also we've got the cause. And this is one thing that I think a lot of teams miss, right? You don't just tag something as blocked and then it's blocked, forget about it. You need to know the reasons why, because that will help you either unblock them or find themes around why work keeps getting blocked in your way of working. For those that may argue, well, a blocked column is an anti-pattern, we should never do it. I would actually argue that if you don't do anything around the data and the reasons behind blockers, that is far worse than having a blocked column. Because if you're not trying to improve around the reasons why work's getting blocked, it doesn't really matter. It's a redundant argument. And that's why really the impact of being blocked is one of the biggest blind spots organizations have when it comes to new ways of working. We know that flow efficiency for teams is anywhere in the range of 5 to 15 or 10%. So that means kind of 95 to 85% of the time work's just sat there. It's sat there idle, sat there waiting, it's not being worked on, and it's blocked. Continuous improvement is a really important goal, don't get me wrong. But what we should be looking for is the insights that block data give us, because they allow us to target the most impactful root causes of blocked work in our team, in our organization. And it's a way also to see if any changes that we make actually improve the outcomes in our way of working at team or organizational level. And it's embedded into, common concepts that we hear, right? So we've got the Kanban guide, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Part of, having a Kanban system is active management of items in a workflow. And part of that is unblocking blocked work. So you need to be unblocking blocked work in order to really have a Kanban system. So if you aren't doing something about that, if you aren't actively trying to unblock blocked work, are you really doing it? Is a question I would ask. So it's clear that this is embedded into one of our methods, but also roles, right? So Emily Weber, she does fantastic work around Agile and new ways of working. She's got a great article that explains the role of a delivery manager. It's almost kind of like a day in the life. And one of the things that she says is that delivery managers should remove obstacles and blockers that might get in the way of delivery. So again, kind of this information, this telemetry around blocked work, we need to be looking at it in order to kind of be fulfilling our role almost. And then when we think around, new ways of working at scale, so past the team level now, John Smart's book, Sooner, Safer, Happier, one of the best books for me that's come out recently around new ways of working at scale. He has a great line in there. He says, impediments are not in the path, impediments are the path. And I think that's a really kind of important way to look at things like blocked work, right? So a lot of time we'll ask, well, what are our impediments? What are our impediments? And we don't understand that actually those are the things that if we really, really went after them and focused on them at team level and team of teams level, that's where we get the biggest bang for buck when it comes to new ways of working across the organization. And when we're doing stuff at scale, right, traditional managers and leaders, they become unsure around their role. What part do I play when we've got a bunch of teams that are cross-functional and empowered and self-organizing? How can I add value? Because they do it all themselves. And Mark Burgauer has a great talk around work that Maslow did on psyche and management. And, one of the great parts of the talk for me is this particular section, where he talks around kind of two things that managers should try. One is make it easy to say no to you. But the second one I think is even better for me is, what can I do to help you do your job better? So when you think around teams getting blocked, the frequency of blockers occurring, the impact it has, this is how managers can help. They can help teams in removing or resolving or reducing the impact of those blockers. And that's where they start to add value when it comes to new ways of working across the different parts of the organization. And then the final talk that I want to kind of give a shout out to, this one from Jay Bloom, it's about maybe 5 or 6 years old now. And it's kind of a case study around the use of data and using that to drive continuous improvement. And he makes a really good point around that we shouldn't just visualize work for the sake of it, because that's built into Lean and Agile and Kanban, all around the use of data. We have to visualize things that actually lead to action. And, data is prominent, but it needs to trigger visits to the Gemba, to the work. So you'll often hear, Lean Agile practitioners say to leaders, go to the Gemba, go where the work is. We need to find ways to encourage that. It's not just sufficient enough to throw out that as an offhand remark. There needs to be the use of data to invite them in. It needs to encourage them to go, to partake in that, to understand it, to work with the teams and see how they could add value. So really, what we need to think about is any data on blockers, it needs to be an invitation to the Gemba for leaders. And that's the third Squid Game reference for this talk. That's the invitation to Squid Game. That's what we want the blocked work insights to lead to. We want it to be something to show the leaders that gets them curious, that invites them to go and see and help the teams within their organization remove the impediments to flow. One of my biggest inspirations, heroes, whatever you want to call it, in the Lean Agile world is Troy McGinnis. I'm sure plenty of you know of his work. He tweeted this recently, which I thought was a really great kind of snippet, particularly relevant for this type of talk. Common question he gets around Agile and metrics is where to start. And his goal really is to find systemic issues through the use of data. So it doesn't really do much going deep, on a particular team. So creating tons of metrics and visualizations and analyzing loads of data for a particular team and doing that kind of piecemeal. What you really want is to go with something lightweight and work with teams across the organization and find what are their top 3 internal, external blockers or dependencies. Those are the things you need to visualize. And those are the things that you need to go after and fix, the things that will actually really improve things. So coming back to our comic Agile strip, so we had, our Agile coach that identified, look, some stories are getting blocked and in development, and, we care around flow, and it's important that we do something about that. And it is important. That's definitely not the wrong mentality to have. What we really want is people with this kind of answer, right? So we want to focus on preventing our work from getting blocked and actually get better at unblocking them. Yeah. So not just kind of marking it as blocked and then forgetting about it. And, for me, that's where the crux of this talk comes in. So it's where we start looking at some insights on blocked work and see how we might be able to use this in order to improve our process, improve our way of working within our team or across the organization. So the first example to show you is work that is currently blocked. And what this does is this chart shows you the items that are currently identified as blocked and how long in calendar days they've been blocked for. What's also built into this is kind of a conditional formatting, a color change, if you will. So if it goes past a particular threshold, a particular value, it will change color. So for this particular team, anything that's less than 30 days is kind of a light gray color. Anything that's between 30 and 60 days is a dark gray, and anything past 60 days goes a bright orange. And really the intended behavior with this visualization is to start with the items that have been blocked for the longest amount of time and really focus on unblocking these over starting new work. So in this instance, our top 3 items, they've all been blocked for nearly 4 months now. So you've got to ask yourself as to, well, why that is. Do we even care about them anymore? Have we missed the boat with this? Have we missed the feedback loop? What are we going to do about these rather than just focusing on the new feature that's cool and exciting? And the issue ID, so we're using Jira in our organization. I've just blurred that out for the purposes of not naming and shaming a team, but it should be actionable, right? So you should be able to drill into that and find out more about it. But that's the first visualization, currently blocked items. The second one is blocker frequency. So this is looking at kind of more adding up those blockers and how frequently they occur. So it's looking at, for a given week, how many items in that particular week were identified as blocked. You can change the time cadence to be, per day, week, month, quarter, if you will. And also there's a trend line, the line in blue, which shows kind of if we're heading in the right direction or not in this instance. So really the intended behavior is to look at the trend line here. So look at the direction that's trending. Is it trending up or down? What we really want is this to be trending downwards, so blockers are occurring less frequently, or that at least it's remaining low and stable, so that when blockers do occur, they're few and far between, there's not many. What it also can do is you can use it for a bit of root cause analysis. So in this instance, if I want to look at that week, where there were 10 items that were blocked, I could drill down, look into that, find out more around those particular ones, what were they, and use that as a basis for maybe a conversation with the team. But that's the second visual, blocker frequency. The third one is mean time to unblocked. This is a play on traditional kind of DevOps measures that you might see. So mean time to recovery, mean time between failures, that type of thing. And it's basically showing that for items that are identified as blocked, how long in calendar days and on average does it take us to unblock them? And again, it's supported by a trend line. So really we're looking here as to, well, when work gets blocked, do we resolve our blockers quickly, or do they take a long time to resolve? And over time, again, you want this to be trending downwards or low, meaning that, when work does get blocked, we swarm on it, we help each other out, or it doesn't take us long to resolve the blockers when they occur. So this team is quite alarming. Some weeks, the one we zoom in on here, those items that were blocked and then unblocked that particular week, some of them have been blocked for, there was one there, 675 days that have been blocked for. You're getting close to kind of the 2-year mark on that one. So you've got to wonder, why were we even trying to unblock it? Surely we've missed the boat there. Maybe we missed the feedback loop with the customers. You really want to limit the amount of time work is spending being blocked, because it's just sat there idle and nothing's progressing with it. And then the final visual to show you, I'd say this one is my favorite, is looking at the days lost to being blocked for a particular item. So this example, we've got a team's data over the last 4 months, and we're looking at kind of the proportion of the cycle time for that item. So if you look at that top one there, that took just over 115 days cycle time. We're looking at the proportion of the time spent being blocked, which is in orange, compared to the time spent not blocked, which is in grey. So it's getting close to things like flow efficiency. It doesn't model queues as much, but it just shows you kind of for those items that were blocked, actually what's the proportion of time it's spent being blocked versus not being blocked. And really kind of, you want to be looking at this, if you've got lots of deep orange bars and not a lot of grey, then that's a problem. If you've got like those bottom 4 ones there where there's a few days blocked, but then there's more time doing them blocked, then I think that's to be expected, that's okay. But if you've got ones like these ones at the top here where generally there's more time spent blocked than actually unblocked, you've got to identify some reasons as to why that is. So you could potentially use this in a discussion with a team, maybe take it for a particular time cadence into a retrospective or a continuous improvement session. Use it to focus on, well, what could we do differently? What could we do in terms of changing our way of working? So the impact of being blocked was not as great. But these are generally quite team-centric, right? What's even more impactful for your leaders, your senior managers in your organization, is aggregating it. And this is kind of coming back to the point I mentioned around organizations being blind to how much time is being lost across all their teams. This is a view from our organization that I took last week, and this is across all our teams. So bear in mind, Nationwide has nearly 18,000 people that work for them. Not all of them are in Agile teams, of course. But it just shows since the start of the year, how much time we're losing to being blocked, how frequently blockers have occurred, how much time has been lost, and also, how long it takes us on average to unblock. So 2,500 items currently blocked. That's not good. Nearly been blocked over 10,000 times since the start of the year. Lost over 100,000 days due to being blocked. And when we get blocked, it takes us on average about 3 weeks to unblock something and start working on it again, rather than it being a quick way to resolve a blocker. So that's really kind of, it prompts a lot of good conversation as to what we could do differently. Is it even the way we've architected the organization? Have we architected around fast flow? And you can bring things like team topologies thinking into that. But the natural question for me is, what's slowing us down? What are the blockers? And that's where you need to dig deeper. This is where you need to work with the teams. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning around adding the reason why work gets blocked is so important. So when you add the reason as to why work is getting blocked, it allows for much greater visibility in the cause of why work is blocked. And you can then look at, well, what blockers are the most frequent and which of them impact cycle time the most. So, it helps everyone agree on the importance of solving the top reason and watch, hopefully, the cycle times reduce and the stress that people have at work. And in terms of, enjoyment of their work, it should improve. People should be less stressed and people are getting stuff done, getting stuff out there, getting feedback. So in this instance, we can see that this particular team has lost 86 days due to external dependencies, 39 days to technical dependencies, and 31 just to changing priorities. So, if we're wanting to think as to, well, where could we improve our way of working? Well, it's going to be to improve our relationship with other teams. It's going to be improving the impact that external dependencies have on us. So what you really want is you want more conversations like this. So asking, the team, why do external dependencies impact us so much? And teams might not know when we need their help. So it's looking at, well, what could we do differently in order to try and improve that? Could we invite them to our planning? Or do we need to change something in our definition of ready about this? There's no silver bullet, right? There's no single answer. But it just means that you're kind of informing your discussion, informing your conversation as to, well, these are the ways that we could actually improve things. These are the top impediments or blockers to flow we need to go after. And, once you've made a process change, you can observe the impact to see if things have improved. And then we can quantify our impact if if we've improved our way of working, we are reducing the frequency of blockers that are occurring, or in addition to that, the time being lost being blocked is decreasing. So, for myself and my value proposition as an enablement specialist, I want to be able to show the organization that this is how I can come in and I can help. So I could come in September, work with your team to understand what the reasons are for blockers, and let's focus on ways we can improve that. Let's focus on reducing that. And then, the next month we can see the impact that's having. Now, of course, correlation doesn't equal causation, right? So it should, lead to some more informed conversation again. So, well, is that the real reason? Or is it just a case of we forgot to tag stuff as blocked? Or maybe the team think we're using it to assess their performance. And it's kind of, well, we're not. And, building that relationship between the teams and the leaders so the teams don't feel like they're being pressured to not identify blockers. They should be transparent. We should be collectively trying to improve our way of working. A touch on dependencies. Dependencies are fairly common in large, complex organizations like the one I work in. Dependencies are either things that another team needs to do in order for you to be able to do something, or something you need to do in order for another team to be able to do something. Dependencies have a huge impact on flow, and really they're blockers that are waiting to happen. They really are. So if you do have dependencies, take a similar approach. So track them and aggregate their impact, focus on using that data, that telemetry to break them, or at least manage them better. Just be mindful that you'll never break them all, right? Some dependencies exist for valid reasons. There's reasons why we have legal teams, for example. It's not just a case of teams should be completely 100% independent, certainly not in organizations the size of mine. And ultimately, just remember that if you are using SAFe, you won't find salvation in red string. So as much as it might give you a warm, fuzzy feeling, it's not really going to help that much. looking at some of the stuff that I've shown in the previous slides, that's the thing where you're really going to improve your way of working. That's where you're going to have the biggest impact across the teams in the organization. So in summary, kind of, well, how do we get started with this? The three things that you need to capture are the date work was blocked, the date work was unblocked, and if you want to dig down, you don't have to do this, of course, but I would suggest so, the reason or reasons behind blockers. And then with that information, you can treat it the same way we do with things like work items and cycle time, work in progress, etc. You can visualize things like currently blocked items or blockers in progress, like it's on the screen there, blocker frequency, daily blockers, days lost to being blocked, days lost to a particular blocker, and then mean time to unblocked or blocker cycle time. For those of you that maybe don't want to get too deep down in the data and build this kind of thing, put a link there on the slide to a couple of tools you can use. So the first one there, Blocked app, that's one that Troy created. That is web-based but integrates with Jira. And I think that's free to get started with a single team. And then the one Belief that Flowviz, and that's one for teams using Azure DevOps and Power BI. That's one I created. It does a bunch of flow metrics and it's free. So it's not like I'm plugging a particular product, just something that I thought might help teams because it's helped me with the teams and organizations I've worked with. And in summary, so, kind of bringing this talk to some key takeaways for you. The importance of being blocked is that it provides one of the biggest insights into organizational impediments to flow. Being blocked is being unable to start or finish something we want or need to do. That's a good standardized way if you want to standardize around how do we think around blockers. Just like defining done and defining ready, teams should be defining what blocked means for them in their context. They should be agreeing as to when blockers occur, what do we do? When we're unblocked, what do we do? And having a common consensus around what that means. Try to avoid using block columns, like I mentioned. But what's most important of all, so even if you are doing block columns, the Kanban police won't come after you, I don't think, unless they're on this call. Analyzing the data on blockers is what's most important. So using that to drive continual improvement in your way of working is the key thing here. For teams, aim to reduce the frequency of blockers and the time it takes to resolve them. And for leaders, use the insights from blocked work as your invitation to the Gemba to go work with the teams and understand how you can be an effective leader in a modern way to work and environment. And that kind of summarizes the session. Finish a little early, chance to ask questions if people have them. Details on the screen. I'm sure you'll get a copy of the slides. But other than that, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much. First of all, questions from the audience to what Nick just showed. I think there was the question regarding the tools that you used or the add-ons. You just said you will post the links somewhere.
Yes, I can. Well, in the slides, there's a link within the slides, so people can just go view them. The tool that we use at Nationwide is a BI tool called ThoughtSpot. We just pull the Jira data into that, so it's like a BI tool. Troy's one is web-based. The one that I've done for Azure DevOps is Power BI.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Further questions?
A lot of people asking around the tools, and we do have Easy BI actually. We just got that the other day. I haven't played around with it too much. I think most of the others probably been answered as we've gone through, right?
Yeah.
What tool did you use? Yeah, that was Troy on the slide. I should have put his name on there, really, shouldn't I? I'll change that. The things that we could solve during your session, we did. Yeah. But Marcus, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, a quick one and remark. A quick one is I didn't get the name of the person on the slide where you showed the delivery manager. There was a quote of
Emily Weber.
Emily Weber. Okay, thanks. Put it down. The other thing is, so you also had a slide about that it can be useful to have this kind of graph to show how you how to present your performance as an agile coach, I guess, or as an enabler. But for that, I guess, like in practice, if you come into a team that is struggling and you first get them to visualize their blockers, you then would need to allow for some time things continuing as they're planned, so that you first gather some data, right? Or
yeah,
because if you start improving immediately, things would be like a flat line. So yeah. I'm just wondering about this incentive here to actually first keep the problem alive for a while to show better performance.
Yeah, so there's a team, there's a few teams within a value stream I'm working with at the minute, and kind of what I'm trying to coach them around at the minute is just getting in the rhythm of marking stuff as blocked, and we had a session on Monday last week where we just defined what our definition of blocked was, and then what we've agreed is we're going to run it probably through to the rest of the year, and then that'll be kind of our baseline data. And then kind of think around, well, what ways could we do things differently? And then we'll see if we've improved. Because yeah, you don't just want to like take 1 week's worth of data and then, oh, here's all the improvements. Aren't I amazing? You need a good sample data to begin with. You're right.
Interesting, but do you still estimate the value of the sample data higher than, giving the team the satisfaction of, hey, we changed something, that's great. So you would see it's rather worthwhile to, I don't know, just keep them waiting for 1 month or something to actually keep the problems going?
With this particular team, we've gone with that just because that's kind of what they asked to do. So I'm kind of, I wouldn't necessarily gather the data for that long to begin with. I'd maybe do short, but I'm kind of like, well, they're buying into the experiment at least. So maybe just let it play out. It might be too much data. Particularly December, Christmas time, probably going to have a lot of work blocked. But that's kind of normally how I would do it. If they've got a time horizon they want to go with, let's go with that. But then I'd probably suggest maybe 6 to 8 weeks, gather it, and then let's see how we could improve.
Great, thanks.
Florian.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for the great talk. I would be interested in how you invite the leaders for the Gemba. Are they contacting you? Say, hey, Nick, can you help us? Or how do you make this connection and the invitation for the leaders that they really want to see, that they want to do the Gemba?
Yeah, so it will be part of when we contract with different parts of the organization. So kind of some prerequisites for this is how we work as enablement specialists. So we specialize in visualization, removing impediments to flow, and your role as part of this will be X, Y, Z, and then maybe we give them an example as to, in this instance, if, I don't know, external dependency kept coming up as the main blocker, we'd expect you as a leader to be able to partner with us to resolve that. It's not just a case of what I see sometimes maybe delivery managers or scrum masters do is just kind of take the data to the leader and say, look, this is rubbish, you need to sort it. It needs to feel like more of a partnership. So it's something that we do when we're contracting with different parts of the organization and we're helping them. We have an agreement with them up front as to, okay, you need to do this as well. One of our principles is actually leaders go first. So it's kind of, it's not just for the teams, it's primarily for you. So yeah, we do it kind of in our upfront contracting with them.
Further questions? If not, then again, Nick, thank you very much for that session. I think you brought to the point of how important blockers are to us in our working environment. Let's learn from it.